people don't. What good can we draw? What application can we draw out of that? You guys, are you coming back this way? Y'all spread out. Y'all just gonna stay back there? I feel very lonely. So if y'all can come back towards the front, these front sections, that would be fantastic. While you all are moving, move closer. I mean, y'all are all the way in the back. You can't feel the love that way. It's the last night. Come on. You can't be that tired. Come on. The few extra, some of y'all have those little Fitbit counters or your little step counters. Go on and get your extra 30 steps. Come on down to the front. Every little bit counts. Every little bit counts. I want you to know that what we've been doing the past 6 weeks would not be possible if there weren't a group of women who were here early every Wednesday night and on their phone, on their Voxer apps, talking all week long. And so I know some of them don't want me to do this, but if you have volunteered at all over these 6 weeks, would you please stand? And you ladies here that are on the front who've been helping out with the planning and the making of the cards and the balloons and all of that, just do it. Just do it. Where's, if Faith, if you can hear me, come in the back door. There she is right there, Faith. I know there's so many others of you that have really helped. We couldn't have done it without you. I really, really appreciate you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I kind of asked certain girls, and then also a lot of you who are on the list for gathering of the girls to volunteer. You may have been getting those emails, and so many of you were willing to help out, so we really appreciate it. Really appreciate it. Also, I want to mention that, as I said before, when you went to your groups, the study guide, or I wanted to encourage you to get together to solidify what you have learned in Genesis and to talk about what you're going to do moving forward. There will be a study guide available for that last discussion if you want to use it, and it will be up on the website by Friday. So feel free to go there. And actually, after this week, all of the videos and the study guides that have been available for this 6 weeks will be up there for a little while longer. So if you missed a week or missed a guide or want to share it with a friend, feel free to go on the women's page at ocbfchurch.org/women. And on the right-hand panel, you'll see a listing where you can grab anything that you need to share it with somebody else. There will be snow cones tonight. It's your last night to dose out on sugar. Do it, do it, do it. Why not? So, y'all, I know that everybody in here knows that Prince died. And I know that some of you were very disturbed. Come on, shame the devil, tell the truth. Y'all had Prince playing in the car for days after that. Y'all know y'all were doing it in the car. Kids were looking at you crazy, but you were having a moment. What a lot of people don't know, if you were familiar with Prince, you probably remember a girl by the name of Vanity. Anybody remember Vanity? Now, do y'all all know she died this year too? Okay. So, yeah, she died a couple months before him. I read up on her a little bit, and she had an overdose in '94. And after that overdose, she says that Jesus appeared to her, and he told her that if she promised to give up not just the drugs, but her vanity persona, he would save her. She had a complete 180 in her life. Upon her recovery, she got rid of the stage name, stopped going by it. She completely disconnected herself from that world. She claimed to be a born-again Christian, and she is quoted as saying, "When I came to the Lord Jesus Christ, I threw out 1,000 tapes of mine, everything, interviews, videos, all of it." She refused to take any revenue from any of her recordings from her vanity days. She cut off all ties with Hollywood and show business. And while she still had the consequences of her rough life, she suffered renal failure, and ultimately that's what she died from. For the remainder of her days, she went around sharing her testimony and telling people about Jesus Christ. This is a girl who was broken, and she turned bold. And even for the time of her life, even though she struggled with sickness and even though she struggled with the results of her choices of that time in her life, she would consider herself to be blessed. because she had figured out, even though it was through a long, hard road, what it was to follow Christ. When I thought about this story of Tamar, I was thinking, man, there's a lot of stuff that was wrong in here. And we can't say, just because at the end of the day, Judah calls Tamar righteous, we can't say, well, she was righteous, so I'm going to go do what she did. I'm going to go to the side of the road and go catch me a man and then say, well, I did it in the name of Jesus. That's not the takeaway, just in case that's what you were getting from this. Let's just start with that. That is not the takeaway. Tamar is married to a man named He's evil. He dies. Then her father-in-law, Judah, gives her to his other son, Onan, who's supposed to perform a duty to her. It wasn't just a biblical duty. It's a duty that was actually followed by a lot of customs in the old Eastern time. But Deuteronomy 25 talks about it, and it specifically says that when a brother dies, it is the other brother's duty to continue his line. And this was especially true for because he was the oldest son. The oldest son had many responsibilities, and so since he wasn't there, his child, his heir, his son would need to take on that role. That meant carrying on Judah's name, his family lineage. That also meant providing for Tamar and giving her an inheritance. And so the fact that she didn't have a son was a big deal, not just for her, but for her family. It had great implications. And if you've studied the Bible, you know that there were many prophecies that said that the line of Jesus Christ would come through Judah. So if Judah has a son who doesn't have a son, that's a problem. But Onan doesn't do what he's supposed to do either. So God kills him off too. Now Judah's looking around and saying, oh, wait a minute. This girl done been with my first son and he died. Then I let her get with my second son and he died. She ain't getting with my third son. But he knows what's supposed to happen, and the third son is younger, and so he sends her off and says, just wait on him to grow up, without really having any intention of doing that. And I think about how Tamar must have felt at this time. First, I'm a grieving widow who is passionately disappointed that as a young woman, I don't have the man that I married, the man that I intended to spend a lot of my life with, and he's not here. And then his brother, who's at least supposed to like me enough for me not to be destitute, is actually putting me out there in a situation where he knows what he's doing to me. So now I'm grieving, but I'm also unwanted and rejected and cast away. And then my father-in-law, who's supposed to make sure, at least if he has a third son that I'm taking care of, is putting me away. I'm actually supposed to stay with my father-in-law. He sends me back to my daddy's house. So just go back to where you came from. We'll call you when we need you. How did it feel to be Tamar? And she's in a conundrum because she is aware of how this is supposed to go, but Judah's not playing his part. It's interesting to me that Judah, it doesn't seem like he ever considered the fact that his children were the problem. Seems he just put it all on her. So the next scene that we see, Tamar has decided, you know what? I've been sitting here on the backside of the desert waiting for this boy to grow up. And I have heard, it says that she heard in verse 13, your father-in-law is going up to Timnah to shear his sheep. And she had seen that no other son was showing up. So she says, you know what? I'm going to do something about this situation. This woman who has been grieving and who has been unwanted and who has been rejected and who has been basically handed a bad deck of cards, a bad hand, and has been up to this point fairly obedient. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm following instructions. You're telling me to go back to my dad's house? Okay, I'll go back to my dad's house, even though this is not how it's supposed to be. But I'm trying to do what you're telling me to. And after a point, it seems like she was like, wait a minute. And I don't know if you've ever gotten to this point in your life, because I have, where you just say, you know what? Enough is enough. Enough is enough. It's almost like Tamar said, I am not going out like this. I'm not going to keep letting people put me on the back burner and treat me like my life does not matter. I'm going to do something about this. That ought to sound familiar, because there was another woman who had that same thing going on and said, no. Let me just fix this the way and do this the way it's supposed to be. So she must have known what kind of man Judah was. She must have known what his tendencies were. She must have known, given the opportunity, what he would do. Because it doesn't seem like she worked really hard to come up with a plan. She just heard where he was going to be, and she just made sure she was in the right place at the right time. So these shepherds have been in the field, and they're all hot and sweaty, and, they're like, man, come on, we're done. Put the sheep behind the gate. Let's go get a drink, and let's go find some women. And she was like, I know where they're going to be, and I'll make sure that I make contact with Judah. Judah's not going to help me, so I'm going to help myself. Judah was a player, and Tamar knew it. And this is a smart girl, because think about this for a second. She had one shot. One shot, not just to catch him in an action that she expected him to take, but one shot to know her own cycle, to know when she would get pregnant. She had one shot to make sure that she didn't just go in and do it and then hope that he would believe her later. She was like, I know just how to prove this. I'm going to make sure that if I'm going to put myself out there, if I'm going down, you are going down with me. So we're not dealing with a fool here. We're dealing with a smart woman who after a while said, you know what, I'm going to stand up and take care of myself. What I find interesting is that she didn't just ask him for any old thing. She said, I want your seal, I want your staff, because those things are unique to you. And at the end of the day, what I'm trying to do is to be identified with you. I don't just want to have a baby. I don't just want to have an inheritance. I need it to be a baby from this family. Because at the end of the day, the identity that you were supposed to give me is what I want. I want what's coming to me. And I need people to know that specifically I am tied to you. Now, this all comes to a head when in Genesis 38:26, Judah, after she comes and says, I got pregnant, and he wants to kill her, and then she says, hold on just a second, the baby is yours. I mean, can you just see them? I mean, have you ever watched those talk shows where they do the paternity test, and then the daddies just be like, because they really didn't think it was theirs. And then when the test comes out, they just look like. So he's sitting there going, man, I'm caught. And he says, Tamar is righteous. How is the woman who was deceitful and shrewd and cunning and trapped him, how is she righteous? In Ruth chapter 4, verse 12, when the Bible is talking about the heritage of Ruth and her family, it doesn't just mention Tamar's son, Perez. It says, Perez, the son of Tamar. In Matthew chapter 1, when we're talking about the lineage of Jesus Christ, all these men are listed. And then when it gets to Perez, it says, Perez, the son of Tamar. This woman didn't just end up in the genealogy of Jesus Christ. She got a mention. Sarah wasn't mentioned. Rebecca, Rachel weren't mentioned, but Tamar was. So this is not like Judah just made this up and said she was righteous. Apparently, God considered her to be too. And I was trying to figure out, how does a woman who makes all these mistakes, that is so broken, and out of her brokenness makes some crazy choices, how is she called righteous? Sometimes God knows where we've been, what we've been through, and that we are grasping for straws just to fix it the best way we can. And he is so gracious. He is so grace-giving that he says, even when they're reaching for me and can't get all the way to the top, I'm going to reach down and help them out. Because what I'm looking at is their intention. What I'm looking at is, are they doing the best they can with what they know? Like Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you do better. So he knows that we are but clay. And even if you can think back 20 years when you were trying to do right, if you knew then what you know now, even your best right based on what you know now was still not quite right at all. We are always growing, and we're developing, and we're changing, and God knows that. Now let's get real. Some stuff in our lives is broken. Some stuff in our lives is broken, and because it was so badly broken, there's some things we really can't go back and fix. But even if there's some things you cannot change, do you know that God can use even what you've learned from your mistakes to have you make better choices today? There are some of you who know good and well that the kind of mother you were, if you could go back and do it over again, there's a lot of things you would change. But what you did in that season has made you the best grandmother, auntie, godmother in the world. Some of you know that the way you were married in that first marriage, maybe he was wrong or maybe you were wrong, but it changed who you were, and so for some of you, it has changed who you are for the better. It taught you how to love better. It taught you how to give a man what he needs. It taught you how to understand that you are worth something and that whatever a man says does not define who you are. So everything that we go through, even if it's broken and it's in the past, God can use it if we are willing to step out on faith and be bold, trusting that as we do the best we can with what we know, and as we are continuing to seek him and walk in obedience, he can use what we give. I emailed Mary Carr, some of you know her, just to check on her. She came to my mind, and she had open heart surgery recently, and I just checked on her, and I just said, how are you doing? And I have this section from her email that she sent me. She said, so in this season, I am learning to heal in God's time. I have got to stop trying to control things and let my daddy run the show. I thought I was fine even with my blood pressure climbing and some things going out of control and being crazy since the surgery. But Crystal, even though that has been a crazy ride, my health, I am enjoying waking up and praying for others. Morning, noon, and night, God has done and shown me some awesome things in my prayer life. I mean, things I could hardly believe, especially things people have asked me to pray for the previous afternoon. And then I wake up at 4:30 a.m. and I'm thanking God for working things out in their life. And then at 5, I get a text from them saying, he answered my prayers. I'm getting to see God work in a new and different way, even though I'm flat on my back recovering from open heart surgery. And I wouldn't change the brokenness of my body for the boldness with which I've learned to approach the throne of grace and the blessing that I have been able to see in my own spiritual walk during this season. I'll never forget, I was listening to this lady on the radio. She talked about how her son, she had $7, was it 12, something like that in the bank, and she had no money and not enough money to go out and buy him diapers. And she has made such financial leaps and advances in her life. But she said it all goes back to that one day where I was so broke. And I looked at my baby son and said, you don't worry, I will never be this broke again. And because she was so motivated to provide for her son, it gave her a boldness to do things that she'd never decided to do before, to step out on faith and to trust God to provide and to stop diminishing her own abilities, but to trust and believe that what God put in her, he could actually use. And now she uses that blessing, that turnaround situation in her life to be a blessing to others, to teach them how to manage their finances. But it started when she was broken and didn't have enough money to take care of her kids. Sometimes the pain that we have is exactly what pushes us into our current purpose. But if we would just let God have his way and refuse to give up trying to move forward with what we know from yesterday and believe that God can provide the knowledge that we need tomorrow as we move in the grace that he's given, we will see that the brokenness that leads to our boldness is enough for us to live blessed. When I think about Rahab, she had the same story. She had a moment where she heard the Israelites were coming and that the walls of Jericho were going to fall. And just like Tamar had that moment where she said, you know what? I'm not going out like this. I think Rahab had the same moment. You know what? They're going to destroy this whole city, but I'm not going out like this. And I have nothing to lose, so I'm going to trust in a God of these people that I've never even met and I don't even understand. I think that Ruth had that same moment when her husband died and she had to choose whether to follow Naomi or whether she was going to stay in her foreign land, the land that was antithetical to the Jewish people. And I believe she said, you know what? I'm not going out like this. And I have nothing to lose, so I'm going to follow this woman even though I have no idea where this road is going to lead. I think Esther had this moment too, and she was a Jew, where she ends up in the king's palace and she has this choice to watch her people die and to be in the palace protected. She said, you know what? I'm not going out like this. And honestly, I have nothing to lose. And so in these broken places, these women said, you know what? I'm not going out like this. And I'm going to do the best I can, even though I don't know the outcome, to be bold enough for the hope that God can bless me because he is a giver of grace. Tamar and Rahab were Canaanites. Ruth was a Moabite. Bathsheba was a Hittite. Esther was a Jew. It doesn't matter where you've been, where you come from, who your people are, which side of the tracks you grew up on. When you reach that point, even if it's in brokenness and you say, you know what? I'm not going out like this and I've got nothing to lose. And so I'm going to be bold and believe that God can use what I've got, who I am, the good stuff that's happened to me, the bad stuff that's happened to me. And because he is a giver of grace, he can use what I have and turn it into his glory and my good. The same God who providentially overruled the sins of men to bring about the fulfillment of his purposes in Genesis and the sins of women is still in the business of doing that today. Eve danced with the devil. And then in Genesis chapter 4, after 2 sons died, she says, thank God, God gave me another chance and gave me another son. Sarah, who doubted God and went about her own ways to try to create his purposes, saw that doubting God, even when you take a detour, he can still come back and fix it the way it should have been in the first place. Hagar, who had something done to her and ended up in the desert and is watching her son die, and she's on the side of the road crying, on the side of the path crying, and God looks at her and says, don't cry, I got your back. I know you didn't end up out here because of your own fault, but don't worry, I'm going to turn this out for your own good. Your son is going to be okay. Rebecca, even though she was deceitful, and because the consequences of her deceitfulness meant she never saw her son again, that son still ended up in the line of the King of Kings, just like he was supposed to be. And then Rachel, the loved Rachel, who had the beautiful son, Joseph. And this always used to confuse me because I thought Joseph, he was such a good guy. He's the person, right, that should have been in the line of Jesus. No, it wasn't Rachel. It was Leah. It was Leah, the one who was unloved, the one who was trying so hard to get that man who didn't want to love her, who had all these babies and kept praying, Lord, maybe he'll love me now. Maybe he'll love me now. Maybe he'll love me now. It's Leah, the unloved one who ended up buried with Jacob. It's Leah, the unloved one who had the son who was in the line of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. It's Leah, who felt like she was completely uninvited, rejected, and not a part of anything that God was doing, who was right smack dab in the middle of what God was intending to bless us generations to come. You never know how God is going to use your brokenness if you will just choose to be bold and do what you can with what you have while you can and trust him to make up the difference. I love the scripture, Romans 8:28, because God can do what we think he cannot do. He can work everything. You hear that? Everything out for our good and for his glory. The question is, do you believe that when you're on the back, on the floor, uninvited, rejected, and left out? When it looks like the mistakes that you've made, you can't recover from, your kids can't recover from, your family can't recover from, your finances can't recover from, your body can't recover from. But I think back to Vanity saying, I was broken, I got bold, and God still blessed. I just want to challenge you with this study that we've had in Genesis, wherever you're at, to be bold. To be bold and trust that whatever you got to work with, God can work with nothing. He did it at the beginning of time, Genesis 1:1, because he just spoke a word and something just popped up. If he can cause that to happen in the universe, he can cause that to happen in your life. I'll close with this little story. My son, when he was 3, fell into the water. I kept telling him to get out of the pool, and he kept stepping in as little Joel, the little baby, who gets away with murder. He kept stepping in and saying, Mommy, look, I can swim. Look, I can swim. And I kept telling him to get out, and he kept getting in, and I kept telling him to get out, and he kept getting in. And I turned around to put some grapes on a plate. Turned back around, there was a dark spot in the water. He wasn't in there very long, but he was in there long enough now to be scared. So for the next 3, 4, 5 years of his life, he's been scared. Scared that if he tries to go in the water again, even though he knows how to swim, he says swimming lessons every summer, he is dealing with this fear that if I try to go into the water again, it's not going to turn out good. So this summer we took him to camp, and for the first time, he went in to pass that swim test. But he was afraid because you had to start in the deep end and swim to the shallow end. Now he can swim, but he's been burned. He can swim, but he's been broken. He can swim, but he's forgotten that he's learned some things along the way. And I stood on the side and I said, do you know that you can swim? He said, yes, but I'm scared. It doesn't matter. You can swim. We've done everything that you need to do to be prepared for this moment. He took that test the first time and he got all scared and he grabbed the side of the pool. He grabbed the side and they said, no, son. And they get him the little band that says you can't swim in the deep end. He looked so sad. He looked so sad. And I said, well, do you want to try it again? He said, I don't know if they'll let me. I said, Mama will talk to them. They'll let you try again. So he went down to the pool a second time and I said, Joel, don't swim close to the edge. Don't even get close to it. Go into the middle so that you are forced to swim the whole way. You can swim. Well, he came back after camp and he said, Mama, guess what I did? I passed the test the second time and I've jumped off the high diving board. I was like, what? He said, yeah, it's not a big deal after all. Once I was bold enough to just do it the first time, every time after that got easier. Some of us are waiting on God to do things in our life, and he's saying, just jump. Just jump and trust that I have you. Are you trying your best? Are you studying my word? Are you seeking my face? Are you praying to me? Are you in community? Are you doing what you're supposed to do with what you know right now? Then jump and believe that everything you need I have given you in this season. Lord, I just pray right now for the women in this room after hearing about these women in Genesis that made mistakes and that struggled and that thought they knew better than you and that messed things up and twisted relationships and lied and doubted you. It's just a mess. But at the end of this, you still got what you wanted out of the book of Genesis. You still got what you wanted out of those women, and your sovereignty is not thwarted. Your purposes are never thwarted. It's just up to us with whether or not we're going to get in the flow of what you were doing. So I pray right now for these women in this room that whether they're broken or whether they consider themselves whole, I pray that you would allow us all to be bold so that at the end of the day, we know that we are doing our part to be in the flow of what you're doing in this world. Lord, thank you for being the giver of grace so that the glory of your grace can fall on us as we minister to a world, a lost and dying world who needs to know that you are still in the business of putting broken people back together. And we love you, we praise you, we thank you for this time. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you, ladies, for 6 great weeks. Please stay connected and make sure that when we start Overcomers in October, you are plugged into a group. If you feel God nudging you to be a host, let me push you over the edge. Jump.